And it's another original song written by our own Erin McGowan. We are so blessed. So I know that many of us are thinking about wrapping presents and buying gifts and decorating the tree and stuff. And I was wondering what would happen if somebody actually gave the gifts that are outlined in the 12 Days of Christmas song. And I actually found something on the internet that spoke to this. I want to share this with you. It's a letter from a woman who just received the first gift. She said, "Dear John, I went to the door today and the postman delivered a partridge in a pear tree. What a delightful gift. I couldn't have been more surprised. With dearest love and affection, Agnes." December 18th, "Dearest John, today the postman brought me a very sweet gift, and just imagine 2 turtle doves. I'm just delighted at your thoughtful gift. They're adorable. All my love, Agnes." December 16th, "Dear John, well, aren't you extravagant? But I must protest, I don't deserve such generosity. 3 French hens." Next day, "Today the postman delivered 4 calling birds. Now really, they're beautiful, but don't you think enough is enough?" Next day, "Dearest John, what a surprise. Today, the postman delivered 5 golden rings, 1 for each finger. Oh, you're just impossible, but I love it. Frankly, John, all those birds were beginning to get on my nerves. All my love, Agnes." The next day, "Dear John, when I opened the door, there were actually 6 geese a-laying on my front steps. So you're back to the birds again. Where will I keep them? The neighbors are complaining and I cannot sleep, so please stop." Next day, "What's with you and these birds? 7 swans a-swimming. I'm a nervous wreck and it's not funny, so please stop with the birds." Next day, "Okay, Buster, I think I prefer the birds. What am I going to do with 8 maids a-milking? And it's not enough with all the birds and the 8 maids a-milking, but they had to bring their cows." Next day, "What are you, a sadist? Now there's 9 pipers piping. And do they play? They never stop chasing the maids since they got here yesterday. The cows are upset and stepping on the birds, and the neighbors have started a petition to evict me." Next day, "Okay, now there's 10 ladies dancing, and I don't know why I call them ladies. And now the cows can't sleep, and the Commissioner of Buildings has subpoenaed me to give cause why the building shouldn't be condemned." Next day, "What's with 11 lords a-leaping? All 234 of the birds are dead." And finally, the last day, "Dear sir, this is to acknowledge your latest gift of 12 drummers drumming, which you have seen fit to inflict on our client. The destruction of which, of course, was total. All correspondence should come to our attention from the law offices of Taker, Spader, and Beggar, and with this letter, please find attached a warrant for your arrest." So when we are looking for gifts and trying to figure out what is next, we know that's not the route to go. This morning I wanted to begin to move our story, our Christmas story, over to the shepherds. Last week we began with the Mary, and the idea that the Christmas story is a story of our souls unfolding, that it is the search for the awakening of the Christ, that it is also the steps that we take in manifesting dreams in our lives. And Mary, when she was visited by the Holy Spirit, kept this news that she had a secret until she felt like it was firmly rooted within her. And as we follow in the steps of Mary in pursuing our dream or our spiritual path, it's important that we keep it quiet to ourselves and only share it with those who are willing to support us on this journey and to support our dream. Mary represents also intuition and following her heart, which she also did. So we take the story one step further today, and that is with the shepherds. The shepherds also represent intuition, and they represent following their hearts. And I think the shepherds also represent silence. Silence because they were out in the country under the stars, watching over the flocks, and imagine how quiet and wonderful that would be. And so one of the steps on our spiritual path is silence, isn't it? 20 minutes in the morning or 45 minutes or just resting and being still. When we take that time to become still, we allow that which is within us, our dream, and that Spirit of God to come floating to the top, if you will. Because how do we know what we're thinking unless we absolutely get quiet and still and give that a chance, yeah? The other things that the shepherds did is they watched over their flocks by night. Metaphysically, the flocks represent our thoughts. And they directed them. And if one went astray, they went and got it and brought it back. And so this symbolizes we who also watch over our thoughts. And the idea being behind this, that when we watch our thoughts and when we direct them positively, when they begin to go astray and get lost into negative or limited thinking, then when we are visited with this great divine idea, as they were with the angels, or we have this spiritual awakening and we're told to go somewhere in our guidance, in our meditation, the thing that amazes me about the shepherds is they were on it instantly. Yeah, they were visited by the angels, and the angels told them that they had good news of great joy. And even though the shepherds were afraid, immediately the shepherds went and found the Christ child. So I think there's a story and a guideline for us to follow in this. So it's resting in the silence, it's directing our thoughts, and when we're directing our thoughts in a positive direction, when we get the call or the idea or the dream or the inspiration, chances are we can follow it a lot faster than we would had we not taken those steps. So I want to look a little bit about this in a little more detail. So I want to look at negative thought patterns that sometimes we can get into. I was reading an article by a woman named Nancy Schindelfenning, and she said that in many cases, depression actually is the result of habitual negative thoughts. When bad things happen, we begin chastising ourselves with thoughts such as, I'm no good, I'm a failure, nothing goes my way, and our feelings follow what we are thinking, and negative thoughts like these can send us spiraling into a depression. If we think something often enough, we begin to believe it's true, and our feelings match what we're thinking about ourselves. To conquer depression, we must stop those automatic negative thoughts and replace them with more positive and truthful ones. By nipping these thoughts in the bud, we can halt depression before it even starts. Now, maybe that sounds a little bit too simple, but I think there's a lot of truth to that, yeah? Because it's the law of mind action. It's what we believe here in Unity, that thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And when we continually and habitually think something without even watching it, which is why we have the silence and meditation, because we can watch those thoughts that go astray. It's what the shepherds did. They kept an eye on those thoughts that kind of moved off into limiting beliefs or negativity. One of the ways that we know that we're moving into this thought pattern is when we think in terms of always or never, or everybody all the time. You ever spoken like that? Everybody is always whatever, or you never listen, or we always do this and you never do that. And what happens when we and part of being a shepherd is watching when we say those words, because when we speak in that kind of a language, then we're presenting a black and white world where it's this or it's this, but there's no gray area. And the truth is, life is gray, yeah? So rather than finding that we made a mistake and saying, well, I'm so stupid, it's rather, I'm very intelligent and sometimes I do stupid things. You know, if we put the word "and" in there, after a positive statement and then an "and" in there, then it makes room for everything. Or if we say to somebody, you know what, you never listen to me. Well, is that really true? No, you listen to me a lot, but right now I don't think you are. So, you know, so there's that movement that we need to be awake to and aware of. And that is what the shepherds bring us. That is what they show us. Another thing that can pull us into negative thinking is when we're going off into the future, and we talked about this with our dreams, yeah? About hitting the border or hitting limitations. And sometimes when we're into future thinking, it's based on incomplete ideas. And because we don't know what's happening, we can fill it in with all kinds of things that could go wrong. And again, the shepherds say, no, watch it and move it and direct it. Because even if we move off into a direction that's not the right direction, right? We'll learn something from that. We will gain something from that. We'll get life experience from it. So I want to share a story with you about Steve Jobs, and I know I've been telling a lot of Steve Jobs story lately, but he's kind of up right now, and he's quite an amazing person. He shared a story about how he didn't really have enough money to go to college. His parents had saved money, but his parents weren't wealthy, and he was going to read college, and it was very expensive, and he couldn't justify his parents shelling out all this money because he didn't feel like he really was learning anything, and he didn't know what it was doing, and it didn't fit with the big picture of life. So he dropped out of college. And he said when he dropped out of college, he didn't know what he was going to do, but what he decided to do was to drop back into college. Only what that means is he wasn't registered and he didn't pay, but he would sit in on classes. And so rather than be in college and have to take the required courses, what he decided to do was to take whatever interested him. And he said that Reed College was known for its calligraphy, that it was had the best instruction on calligraphy in the country. And he said every poster, every label in every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. And he said it was this amazing and beautiful science, the space between the different combinations, and he immersed himself in the subtlety of the words and the every letter. It was so beautiful. And he said, you know what? He didn't know how this fit into his life. I mean, from the outside looking in, it looked like he was wasting time. How does calligraphy fit in with a life's purpose? Hello. And what he's saying is, you can't connect the dots until you're into the future and you look back. Then you can go back and connect the dots. And what he realized was 10 years later when he was designing the Mac, the fonts that we enjoy today, both in Microsoft and in Macs, was designed because he had an appreciation for each letter and each size and all the different fonts that were available. It was an art. And so we are blessed and we get to enjoy that experience. He said, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. As long as you follow your heart and your intuition, you may not know how the dots are going to connect in the future, but he says they will. You have to trust in something, whether it's your gut or your destiny or your life or your karma or whatever. And he said, this approach has never let me down. When a dream manifests, whether it be Steve Jobs or whoever it might be, and we say yes to it, it blesses not just us, but the world. So I did have a video to show, but it didn't work the first service, and I don't know if you're giving me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. So would you lower the screen? So what I want to show you right now is a video of someone who, in my opinion, is following the steps in the Christmas story, and that is having the truth within them and having it be very deep, and then to stand and to speak that truth. Now this is, and you may have seen it, this is Zach Wallace. He's a 19-year-old University of Iowa student, and he spoke about the strength of his family during a public forum on House Joint Resolution 6 in the Iowa House of Representatives. So he is very articulate.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Zach Walls. I'm a sixth-generation Iowan and an engineering student at the University of Iowa, and I was raised by two women. My biological mom, Terry, told her grandparents that she was pregnant, that the artificial insemination had worked, and they wouldn't even acknowledge it. It actually wasn't until I was born and they succumbed to my infantile cuteness that they broke down and told her that they were thrilled to have another grandson. Unfortunately, neither of them lived to see her marry her partner, Jackie, of 15 years when they wed in 2009. My younger sister and only sibling was born in 1994. We actually have the same anonymous donor, so we're full siblings, which is really cool for me. And I guess the point is that our family really isn't so different from any other Iowa family. When I'm home, we go to church together, we eat dinner, we go on vacations. But we have our hard times too. We get in fights. Actually, my mom, Terry, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2000. It is a devastating disease that put her in a wheelchair, so we've had our struggles. But, we're Iowans. We don't expect anyone to solve our problems for us. We'll fight our own battles. We just hope for equal and fair treatment from our government. Being a student at the University of Iowa, the topic of same-sex marriage comes up quite frequently in classroom discussions. And the question always comes down to, well, can gays even raise kids? And the question, the conversation gets quiet for a moment because most people don't really have an answer. And then I raise my hand and say, actually, I was raised by a gay couple, and I'm doing pretty well. I scored in the 99th percentile on the ACT. I'm actually an Eagle Scout. I own and operate my own small business. If I was your son, Mr. Chairman, I believe I'd make you very proud. I'm not really so different from any of your children. My family really isn't so different from yours. After all, your family doesn't derive its sense of worth from being told by the state, you're married, congratulations. No. The sense of family comes from the commitment we make to each other, to work through the hard times so we can enjoy the good ones. It comes from the love that binds us. That's what makes a family. So what you're voting here isn't to change us. It's not to change our families. It's to change how the law views us, how the law treats us. You are voting for the first time in the history of our state to codify discrimination into our Constitution, a Constitution that, but for the proposed amendment, is the least amended Constitution in the United States of America. You are telling Iowans that some among you are second-class citizens who do not have the right to marry the person you love. So will this vote affect my family? Would it affect yours? Over the next 2 hours, I'm sure we're going to hear plenty of testimony about how damaging having gay parents is on kids. But in my 19 years, not once have I ever been confronted by an individual who realized independently that I was raised by a gay couple. And you know why? Because the sexual orientation of my parents has had zero effect on the content of my character. Thank you very much.
I want to share with you one more example of the idea of moving beyond limits and negativity. There's a woman by the name of Amy Purdy, and she's 19. At the age of 19, she was sick, and this 19-year-old was so excited when she graduated from high school. She wanted to snowboard. That was the thing she wanted to do, and she wanted to travel, and she wanted to do all these different things. So as soon as she graduated high school, she moved to a place where there was snow. She was snowboarding. She's having this great life. She was in school, and she's working. And then she said she got what appeared to be a cold. And within 24 hours, she was in the hospital, and she was on life support, and she was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis. And with bacterial meningitis, she lost both of her kidneys, her pancreas, and her legs below her knees. She said that when she woke up, of course, she was devastated because all of her dreams were gone. Everything that she had wanted to do, especially to be a champion snowboarder, was gone. And she said after the surgery, when she came out and she got her fake legs, she said she couldn't get out of bed. She just laid in bed and she cried, and she laid in bed and she cried, and the legs were next to the bed. And she said she felt like this was going to be her life forever. A wheelchair, legs, laying in bed, everything gone. And she's always lived by the idea that if life were a book, how would I want the story to go? And so she stepped back and she looked at her life, and what she realized was that Amy is gone. The Amy that she was no longer exists, but it didn't mean that a new Amy couldn't show up. And she said, so if my life were a book, how would I like the story to go? And she said, instead of laying in bed and crying, her imagination kicked in. And she spent days and weeks and she's imagining and daydreaming. And she said she hadn't daydreamed like that since she was a little girl. And she saw herself out on the slopes and snowboarding, and she said, I not only saw it, but I could feel the wind in my face. I mean, I was there. She learned to walk, she learned to snowboard, and she finally one day, she got her snowboard and her boots and her fake legs, and she went up skiing. Only they really hadn't designed the feet to fit into a snowboard. And so her first time out, she said that she traumatized the skiers on the chairlift because she fell and her legs came off and they were still attached to her boots, and they went down the mountain without her. She said it was very difficult, but it didn't stop her. And what she says is that, when you bump up against a limitation, the choice is that you can fall back or you can go for it. And she said she was determined that she was going to create feet that fit into snowboarding boots, and she did. It took her a year, but she designed a pair of boots, of feet that fit into snowboarding boots. She has since won 2 World Cup gold medals for adaptive female snowboarder category. She's gone back to school, she's gone back to work, she's founded a nonprofit for people with disabilities, she's traveled to South Africa and helped people who are missing limbs. And what she said was that if life were a book, how would I want the story to go? And that limitations, and again, it gets back to the shepherds, because with the shepherds, they're saying, hey, don't go toward limiting thoughts. Don't go toward the negativity. And if anybody had a reason to go out into negativity and going out into limitations, it was Amy. Instead, she stayed within, she allowed those limitations to push her out into her imagination. So we're walking through this Christmas story. It begins with the divine idea that is given to us. We rest in silence so that we can let it move through us and really take root so it can go. And it is imperative that we watch our thoughts and that we direct them in a positive direction. Again, what happened to the shepherds when they were called? They didn't waste any time. They were there in an instant. And when we are practiced at doing and directing our thoughts in that way, then we too can move fairly quickly. So the Christmas story is our story. We move from silence into action. Next week we're going to explore the wise men and the Holy Family, and it culminates all with our candlelighting on Wednesday and also on Christmas Eve. So we make the Christmas story a part of who we are. We follow in the footsteps of Mary and the shepherds. So hopefully we'll see you next week as we pursue this story. Thank you.